Today we're going to talk about my medical school, Albany Medical College, and I had applied to it, and I was late getting an acceptance, so I was a little nervous. But when I got there, I found that I was about average in the medical class. But those that want to work a little harder on something like pathology or cardiology or pulmonary, they could excel in their different avocation. So freshman year was basically just anybody who's interested in how medical school works. Or how it works is the first year you have anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is where the body is and what it is, and then physiology is how it works. How does your breathing work? How does your heart work? How does your intestine work? How does the musculoskeletal system work, okay? The second year is the pathology. If you break a bone, what does that look like? What's the diagnosis? What's the treatment? And so for everything that they can think of, and one of which is all kinds of different diseases and how they come to fruition, how you find them, and then what's the diagnosis and treatment. And the second year is big on pharmacy and how do the medicines work. The third year is when you go out to your individual love or avocation or interest for the summer. And I chose to go to a foreign group under the Agency for International Development. This was an agency put together some years ago by two teachers. One is a pulmonologist, one is a pediatrician, and one was a cardiologist who also knew a lot about physiology. And that was Dr. I'll get to it. And anyway, I fell in love during that summer with cardiology because it had so much interesting things in it. And Paul Formel was my teacher, an internationally localized leader in cardiology and leader in cardiac training. And then after that, I had to do an internship. So I applied to the University of Pennsylvania and several others. I went to the University of Pennsylvania. I sort of liked it. They were a little edgy, a little one-upsmanship sort of thing. And they explained to me that, I said, well, how much do I have to pay for these uniforms and so forth? They said, you have to pay everything for your uniform. You have to pay to get it cleaned and washed. You have to find your own place to live. And you have to pay for your own food. And you have to pay for any medical equipment you're going to participate in. And I said, well, I don't really have a lot of money. In fact, I don't have hardly any money. And so I thought to myself, I didn't tell them this. And so I looked around for an internship that would really learn a lot, and yet maybe I could even get a little pay for it in my first year of being a doctor. And so I chose the United States Public Health Service as to choose. And I was hoping to get one in New York. There was one on Staten Island, and a hospital, a public health hospital. And so what they did was, unbeknownst to me, is if you went to medical school in New York, you got to go to internship in California. If you went to medical school in California, you got to go to New York. So we're trying to mix people up from different economic and, but more importantly, academic backgrounds, and teach more, so you can learn about both coasts. And so in my third year, we went down to British Guiana. It was a 100-bed hospital, and it had just been had a revolution, and the person who won was a native of that area, and also was not a revolutionary like many were at that time. And so I got to make rounds every day in the different wards I started out with the female ward, and the female ward was all the different female diseases, and then I got to go to regular regular internal medicine, and of course they were of various levels, and but very nice people, and I learned to really get along with them well, and so I had an accident down there where I was fooling around with the house and sort of jumped or fell out a window, and I broke my left knee. And when the x-rays were finally taken, it showed 16 little pieces of bone in the knee. And so when we went on tours of the place, I had crutches, so I always held my crutches behind the feet of the back people, and I didn't want my family to know, especially my mother to know. If she had known I'd broken my leg, she would have been a bit more than a bit upset. And I never told her how I broke it, but anyway, I didn't want to be doubly charged with breaking a leg and also doing it as a stupid way. And so Doer, who was my partner going down there, he went into the hospital there. I couldn't walk with a pain in my knee and a little bit weakness in the leg. And so he went into a hospital and he said, my patient is out front, and I think he might need crutches. So they came on, oh yeah, you probably need crutches. So just wait here. But Doer went into the back, found where the crutches were, and they said, what are you doing? He said, oh, the guy said for me to pick up the crutches and bring them out front. So I got crutches at that day, without much of a medical exam. And so we landed in, we were in Trinidad. We landed in British Guiana, and we were at a welcoming party, and so I was standing there with some doctors from that area, and the one of the local surgeons, a young surgeon, came up and he said, "What's the matter with your knee?" I said, "Oh, I sprained it," and not knowing it was broken because I didn't know it for sure. I thought it was, and so he reached down and touched my knee, and oh my God, he says, it's double the size. In fact, you have blood in the knee. What you can do is, if you would be willing to go with me to the surgical suite in the hospital, I could stick a needle in there and take the blood out, and you'd feel better. And I said, okay. And he said, I said, well, I get an x-ray here too? And I said, no, x-rays only come once a week, and there's a wait for those. Okay, fine. So we went over, and he stuck a needle in and took out 75 cc's, which is a lot of blood. And I guess a quart is about 100 cc's anyway. And so I felt a lot better. And then the next day or two, he called me over and he said, I'm going to put a cast on you. So he put a cast from mid-thigh to mid-calf. And so I was walking with crutches, and I said, I wonder if I really need that cast, because it's really uncomfortable. And so I said, well, I'll just try it without it. So I went back to the surgical place where they had the cast, and I got one of those machines, a rolling machine that can cut your cast off. So I cut my own cast off. I was walking around pretty good, it wasn't too bad. I'd go a little slower, very slow. And so I was hobbling through the place, and the surgeon who worked on me came up to me and said, you're supposed to wear your cast for 6 weeks. What the hell are you doing? I'd worn it for about 2 weeks. He said, well, I'm feeling a little better. He said, you come right back with me now, but I'm going to put another cast on you. So I put another cast on me, and I sort of avoided him for a while. Then I cut it off again, and then I told him, I cut it off again, but I don't really think I need it. I wore it for 4 weeks. He said, well, 6 weeks is supposed to be better, but anyway, I'll let you decide. So I decided to get 2 casts, but I cut them both off before they were supposed to be cut off anyway. I just want to see how the leg would really be healing, and it seemed to be healing reasonably well. So I went back to the States, and I I had X-rays taken. They had sort of beginning X-rays down in British Canada, but we had, obviously America has better X-rays. So they found these 6 little bones in the knee. So my friend who was in training to be a orthopedic surgeon said, "I'll let you see the chief, see what the chief thinks." So the chief, of course, said, "Oh, well, we got 6 little pieces in there, we gotta get those out." And I said, "Why do you get them out?" He said, "Well, they gotta heal outside the body." I said, "Okay, fine." And then I went to my, then I realized I was in the last week of my medical school. My mother had purchased a second-hand Ford car, and my internship was in California. And I had no way to get there because the car she had chosen was a clutch car. So your left leg has to move the clutch while your right foot moves the car. And so I said, I can't have an operation, be in a cast for 6 weeks, because they want me there in 3 days. They wanted me there in a week to start my internship. To start being a public health officer, and that was what I was going to be allocated to do. And so I didn't use the cast on my knee. I just drove out to California, and I never told anybody in California. I said, "Oh, a little sprain in my knee." I didn't really tell them it was fractured, because then they do some kind of a report on, that's what you do. And so, but I got along okay with that. And then the first year I was an intern and did multiple things, like you do a little surgery, a little pediatrics, a little this, a little that. And then the next year, they said, "What do you want to be?" I said, "I'm not sure." They said, "Well, we have a very good internal medicine residency here." I said, "Okay." So I joined the internal medicine residency. And so for my first year as intern, 2 years of internal medicine residency, and then there was an opportunity to take a test. If you pass the test in internal medicine, you're now an official internal medicine specialist. Okay, fine. And I said, "Well, I haven't studied much for it, so maybe I should do it a year after." He said, "Well, if you fail it the first year, you can take it the second year. It's all free. Public Health Service pays for it." Okay, fine. And so I took the test, and unfortunately, I thought at the time I passed it. So now I wouldn't have to study for another year in all those subspecialties I was mentioning. And then I went on to cardiology, and we'll talk more about that in a minute.